Cool. Good morning, everybody. In case you weren't aware, this is the Land Use and Transportation Committee. It is Thursday, May 7th, 9 a.m.-ish, a little after 9. We have one bill before the committee today, 260158, Data Center Moratorium. Sponsor of the bill is City Council President Zeke Cohen, who will present the bill to us momentarily. I'm Ryan Dorsey. I am the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. To my right over here, we've got Councilman Paris Gray from the 8th District. How you doing? To my left over here, we have Councilman Zach Blanchard from the 11th District. How you doing? We got a thumbs up. To my immediate right here, we have Mr. Tony Leva, staff of the committee. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, sir.
Great. Thanks for asking. We are joined by representatives from the Housing, Mayor's Office of Equity. What is the whole name? My brain's not working. We've got Zach here. We've got Luciano from DOT. We've got Gabe from Finance. We have Isaiah from the Mayor's Office. We've got Planning. We've got Law. We've got BDC. And here we are. We have other members from the Office of Council Services and the Council President's staff here. Good morning, everybody, members of the public who have joined us here today for Council Bill 260158, Data Center Moratorium. Sponsor of the bill, City Council President Zeke Cohen, will present the bill. Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning. Thank you to Chair Dorsey and members of the committee for hearing this bill and for your support as co-sponsors. I also want to thank Councilman Blanchard and Councilmember Porter, who are contributing to this work with a series of hearings, the first of which was yesterday. The bill before you today places a one-year moratorium on data center development in Baltimore. As amended, it puts in writing the commitment to study the impacts and develop conditional use standards during that one-year period. Let me be clear. I want to position Baltimore as a leader in innovation. Pound for pound, we have more intellectual muscle than almost any other city in America, and we should dominate the technological future. But currently, too much of the profit from data centers are privatized to a small number of tech companies and developers, while the costs and harms are socialized to the public we serve. The risks are real. Until it is made clear how Baltimore can unequivocally win from this new technology, we will not participate in the race to the bottom. The General Assembly showed great leadership on this issue over the past two sessions. Among other things, they authorized a study due later this year, lowered the floor of what defines a large load customer from 100 to 25 megawatts, and tasked the Public Service Commission with approving rates for large load customers and creating a registry of them. All of this will protect ratepayers from the impact of data centers. It will also take time to implement. As every member of this body knows, BGE bills have skyrocketed, and residents across our city have had enough. A recent study from Johns Hopkins found that more than half of Baltimore households with children missed a utility payment in the past year. A few weeks ago, a restaurant owner told me his BGE bills are higher than his rent. His anxiety about paying BGE is so intense, he fears ending up in the hospital. We've seen churches and small businesses crowdsourcing to keep the doors open. And while I'm inspired by the way that Baltimoreans show up for each other, no one should need to do a GoFundMe to pay their electricity bill and keep the lights on. Data centers are rapidly proliferating in the US, and Maryland is no exception. PJM, a regional grid operator, estimates that our state's peak electricity demand will increase by 12% by 2036. Guess how much the increase would be if you take out data centers? Just 1%. When folks wonder why I'm singling out data centers, that's why. Nothing else comes close to their impact on the grid and in turn, the impact on our BGE bills. I want to remind folks that data centers drive up electricity costs in two ways. First, high demand drives up the cost of electricity itself. We're already paying for the demand placed on the regional grid by data centers that are 70 miles down the road in Northern Virginia. And data centers create the need for local transmission projects. We saw this in South Baltimore, where BGE has currently paused more than $500,000 in capital investment. They have only committed to pausing, not stopping. And remember, when BGE tears up our streets, we pay for it with interest. That interest is their and Exelon's record-breaking profits. Data centers have immense noise, water, and air impacts as well. Teaching in Curtis Bay, I saw how underregulated industrial land uses impacted my students and their families. Our city's legacy of codified segregation and redlining relates to who bears the burden of industrial pollution and has created profound health inequities. Life expectancy is 20 years higher in Roland Park than in parts of South and West Baltimore. This council supports technological innovation. We're committed to growing our city with great jobs. We seek dense, mixed-use development that adds feet on the street and creates places to play, shop, and dine. From a land use perspective, data centers do the opposite. We are also committed to the health and safety of our people. To allow data centers to proliferate without fully understanding the environmental and health impacts and without creating conditional use standards to ensure that Baltimoreans are protected would be nothing less than a slap to the face of our residents. We are going to ensure that any data center that gets built in Baltimore a year out from when this goes into effect is a good deal for our neighbors, for our water system, for the taxpayers, for all of us who breathe our air and drink our water, and for the workers who build it. Baltimore deserves this moratorium. Thanks again for the committee's consideration, and with that, I am happy to answer questions. And I do also have some amendments.
That's my only question is, do you want to talk about the amendments now? Or maybe it's probably best to do that first, and then we'll do any questions in case the presentation of the amendments clarifies anything.
Happy to.
Yeah, please.
Yep. There has been an overwhelming amount of interest and engagement on this bill, and it's shaped what I think is a set of thoughtful amendments that strengthens this bill. Amendment 1 clarifies that data centers cannot be included under the office or telecommunications facility use categories. In addition to the research and development use category, which is in the first reader version of the bill. An applicant can't try to sneak a data center through the zoning approval process by calling it something else. Amendment 2 clarifies the definition of data center by specifying that computing and data transmission has to be the primary use. This ensures, for example, if a major business downtown wants to expand their footprint, they can do so, as long as they don't have a data center as part of their plans.
Mr. President, can I ask you to hang for just 1 second?
Sure.
It's the updated version. Here, let me grab it.
Sorry, we have two different versions of amendments. The numbers that you're referencing don't line up to the ones in the main packet. We have a secondary packet here. Okay, so I see the first one here, as you said, means that it can't be under telecommunications, and the second one, primary use. Okay, third one?
Let me just do, is there, if I do number 2 again?
Oh, yeah,
just
sure.
Give full explanation there.
Yeah.
Amendment 2 clarifies the definition of data center by specifying that computing and data transmission has to be the primary use. This ensures, for example, if a major business downtown wants to expand their footprint, they can do so as long as they don't have a data center as part of their plans. What this amendment does not do is raise the threshold from 10 megawatts or allow data centers as part of a larger facility. We are placing a 1-year moratorium on data centers, no exceptions. Amendment 3 includes the recommendation from BDC and the Planning Commission to include a study. It's due 9 months after the enactment of the bill to give us time to consider the recommendations and enact them. The study will also include community engagement to ensure our neighbors, partners in the building trades, business community, and other key stakeholders are included in the process. Amendment 4 incorporates the Planning Commission recommendation to sunset the bill after a year. This incentivizes us to take action. We are going to set a high bar for any data center development in our city that protects our communities and our workers. And then finally, Amendment 5 incorporates the DHCD request to delay implementation by 30 days. Let me again just close by sincerely thanking everyone who has reached out, who has engaged in good faith, who has come to the table to shape a bill product that does what it says it is going to do without exceptions, but also incorporates community, trades, and all the other voices that have been part of the process. I also want to thank my staff, Ethan, as well as the mayor's office. There's been a really good back and forth dialogue. And so Isaiah, appreciate you all and how you've shown up on this bill. With that, I will yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Councilman Bullock. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Committee members, do we have any questions for the president? Councilman Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership on this. And like you mentioned, we just had the first informational hearing yesterday, and I'm learning a ton about all of this, and I think this is an incredibly important topic, and I am feeling actually pretty good that we can come up with a right way to take advantage of the opportunities here without getting played by, taken advantage of by outside investors or damaging communities that have been historically taken advantage of by those groups. Two questions. One, the amendment with the study says no later than 9 months after the enactment of the ordinance. I guess my question is, do you feel like that's enough time for us then to take the information from the study and then, because presumably that's going to inform however we decide to legislate this? And so if it goes, if we have the moratorium at 12 months and then the report at 9 months, right? 3 months to get that in feels like that could be tight. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. And again, thank you for your leadership yesterday and just on this topic. Look, we went back and forth. There was a good deal of conversation, my team, the mayor's team, other colleagues, to get to that 9 months mark. And the reason I think it's right is because we really want to do the community engagement, the planning, the strategic. That piece, I think, is just critically important for the fidelity of the product that folks come up with. It is really important for me that during that 9 months, all parties that have an interest or something to say about this topic come to the table. What can sometimes happen, and this is just a human dynamic, is folks will find out toward the end that a decision's about to be made, and then there will be a deluge of people coming out. What we are really hoping is to give sufficient time to all stakeholders, to the council, to our partners in the mayor's office to really be thoughtful, because it is my hope and intent that the report that gets issued truly guides the legislation that is put forward. And I do think that 3 months will give us enough landing time, as long as the process along the way is truly robust.
Okay, no, that makes sense, thank you. And the other question I have is not with an amendment. I just wanted to hear your thoughts, and I've heard from Ethan, a good bit on this, but how we are landing on the megawatt threshold.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a really good question about what should constitute a data center, and I've had a really good and robust conversation with some of our folks at the state, who, as you know, have also been really strategically thinking about what makes the most sense. I think that 10 megawatts is appropriate, because I think above that threshold, it is a data center. I think there's ample evidence to suggest that anything that falls below there is not going to cause the kinds of harms that we know larger load-bearing customers, as they are called, can cause. And so we thought 10 megawatts was the appropriate threshold, and that's where we landed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Gray, Bullock. Thank you, Mr. President. We'll go to agency reports now.
Thank you. Should I stay here, or can I sit back down?
Yeah, no need to continue standing. Thank you. Okay. City Solicitor.
Thanks, Chair Dorsey. Jeff Hochstetler with the City Solicitor's Office. Law Department can approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency. Have also seen the amendments and can also approve those. One note, to the extent that the intent is to exclude.
Pull that mic closer to you, please.
Yeah. To the extent that the intent is to exclude offices, research and development facilities, and telecommunications facilities from the definition of data center, it might make sense to move those up to an exclusion instead of having a data center be an exclusion from those other definitions. I'm not quite sure why it's an inverse like that in this proposal, but it would be clearer to do it that way.
Okay. Yeah, please.
I appreciate that, Jeff. I would say the intent here is to close loopholes, not create new exclusions. I think that's where you're getting to as well, but we just want to make really clear what it is we're doing here, and that folks are not able to slip into a definition that would not be fully in comportment with what their actual purpose is. So I think the intent is sort of in the opposite direction, but do appreciate your thoughtful report on this.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, anything else, Jeff? That's good?
Yes, we can approve for form and legal sufficiency.
Okay, great, thank you. Finance?
Good morning, committee members. Gabriel Stewart-Sikowitz here for the Finance Department. Our position is does not oppose. We do want to note that data centers do pay they're subject, when they operate in Baltimore City, they're subject to utility, real property, and personal property taxes. And while Maryland does authorize localities to offer specific incentives to data centers, we do not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, members of the committee. I'm Eric Tiso for the Planning Commission. The commission reviewed this bill in their hearing of April 23rd, and they recommended favorable with 3 amendments that I'll summarize. Number one, that the Department of Planning, in coordination with several other agencies, take up a study during this moratorium period and make findings and recommendations for the council and for the Planning Commission. Secondly, that the bill is amended to abrogate the entire moratorium bill upon expiration, and those are reflected in the president's amendments, which we support. And finally, that the bill specify that during the moratorium, the city will accept and process development proposals for data centers, but that no building permits will be granted while the moratorium remains in place. The amendments should specify that any development, design, or pre-permitting work would be at the sole risk and expense of the applicant. And to explain the commission's thinking on that, their concern was if the moratorium period looks like it doesn't have any end to it, especially because as written, it would remain a permanent prohibition with the definitions remaining after the fact, that if we could solve this and find a way that they could be potentially added to the zoning code, that the work would not begin until that point. And so practically, the start point would be even further out. So just to explain their thought process there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The request for a study between the Planning Commission and BDC is aligned in intent and
100%.
and the way it's executed in this amendment is satisfactory to both?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Then we'll
sir.
go to BDC. Council President,
Actually, let me hear BDC and then if that
Yeah,
goes
please.
on both.
BDC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Tom Welly on behalf of the BDC. We stand by our report of favorable with amendments. And just to expand on that, I first want to thank the Council President's Office for, and Ethan in particular, for their willingness to work with us and the Planning Commission and other agencies on feedback to really strengthen this bill. And I think what we've got is an excellent framework here going forward. Of the amendments that we suggested, the main one that wasn't picked up was, again, increasing that megawatt threshold from 10 to 25. The intent from BDC's standpoint is we're aligned on policy here, but just to ensure that no other project that is not a data center but does fit these criteria or does use 10 megawatts or more of power in the future would not be swept up into this bill. So that was why we were pushing for that megawatt threshold to be aligned with the state level of 25 megawatts, just to sort of be a better safe than sorry, so that nothing could get unintentionally rolled into this and then prevented from going forward. So that was our thinking on that as well.
Thank you, President.
Yeah, let me first thank both Planning and BDC for some really thoughtful dialogue, recommendations. I truly believe your contribution has made this bill stronger. As noted, we did accept 2 out of 3 amendments, and I think particularly of interest is we do not want a downtown business that wants to expand their headquarters to get caught up in this. This is a council that cares deeply about the economic vitality of our city. We want to make sure folks who are investing in Baltimore are doing so with the full support of the city government. However, we did reject the amendment lowering the threshold, as well as the suggestion to allow folks to essentially apply during the 1-year moratorium. And I want to just briefly speak to that piece, which is, again, I think there's a real opportunity for Baltimore to be a leader in putting thoughtful guardrails on this technology so that the harms are not disproportionately borne by residents. I think what's important here is that that entire year is spent with everyone in good faith working together to come up with what it would look like for Baltimore to be really a national leader in this space, in making sure the negative externalities that are inherent in data centers do not fall onto the people that we serve. And so the idea that folks would 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, start applying, to me, betrays the intent, which is about giving the city, giving our residents, giving our research institutions, giving the building trades, giving all of us an opportunity to collaboratively work together to figure this out. And so I don't want to be in a situation where folks are getting to the front of the line before we've even figured out what the standards are supposed to be. And to the councilman to my left's well-made point, down that stretch, when we have produced this report after 9 months, I want to make sure those 3 months are spent with the council working to get the standards implemented. And so I do not think, and I, again, appreciate all the contribution that both BDC and planning have made to this bill, but I do not think it's appropriate to let folks move forward until we're done.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll also note, I've seen images of data centers that are more than 10 megawatts, fewer than 25. I think I saw one last week that was a 14 megawatt facility that appears to have some sort of ground floor use that's not data center, that ostensibly is the kind of thing that you would see on like a downtown street, but then all of the upper levels are nothing but data center usage. And that building takes up an entire city block, and it's got next to it an entire city block's worth of parking lot. And I could just imagine that that's the kind of thing that somebody could ostensibly want to put in the giant hole in the ground that used to be the Mechanic Theater. And that to me would not be the kind of thing I would even want anybody having the opportunity to come to the city and say, well, consider our application for this thing, one, to address one of these points, and two, like, if it would fit into this definition, a definition that allowed something more than 10 megawatts, all the more likelihood that that would be something that somebody would come to us looking to have happen. So these, I appreciate the council president's diligence in considering these amendments that I too would not want to have. Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Luciano Diaz for DOT. We have no position on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. BMZA.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, members of the committee, Justin Williams, Interim Executive Director of the BMZA. The report the BMZA submitted took no position on the policy call, and I recognize it's the council's position. There are 2 points I wanted to raise for the committee's attention. One was raised by finance on the fiscal trade-off, which I recognize the policy concerns about the impact on our residents of the city, but also I'd like to point out to the people that Baltimore ratepayers are already bearing the costs of the energy increases because of the way that the grid works, that we're part of the PJM regional grid. So unfortunately, we have borne the increases of 18% for the past year, but that has happened already without us getting any revenue from property tax or personal property tax or any of the tariffs that would be associated with development. So that's one flag for the committee's consideration. I also pointed out, to the extent there are other concerns about externalities like noise, water consumption, air quality, there's examples from other counties I put in my report that we could borrow from going forward. And then the other big piece here, which it sounds like I recognize the council's desire to keep the low threshold, but as drafted, the 10 megawatt standard, I think will have difficulty in measuring as the city and the people who had to review and process permits. So my suggestion was in the bill to go to a substation standard that's easier to visually see if you're the zoning administrator. So that's a quick example. So you think about a building like 4 MLK, it's going through its plan review process, you submit plans, it shows service entrance, switchgear, network facilities, distribution panels, but it doesn't really show you the capacity of 10 megawatts or not for the building. And it would also be difficult or if not impossible for the plan reviewer to determine how much is going towards the server room versus the rest of the building, wet labs, hoods, et cetera. So that is the biggest concern I have. We recognize the council's desire and we kind of know it when you see it, but it's always the devil's in the details with these sorts of things when, investment is on the line, and recognize we want to promote investment. So if something like a biotech facility that shares data with NIH or University of Maryland's main campus is doing remote processing of data, and there's one of those things where normally it's fine, but you never know when somebody who's litigious, wants to raise that issue and kind of make it a point. And so those are the 2 points for the council's consideration. So that'd be one reason to look at the substation standard, because it's generally, as I understand it from doing research, if it's over like 10 to 15 megawatts, and that does necessitate a substation being built, that's easy to visually see for the zoning office to say, oh, there's a data center because there's a separate standalone substation on site. But with that, we recognize the council's will and stand by to ready to support the work and the study that has to happen as part of this bill.
Thank you. I assume that this ability to review plans and take measurements or gauge power consumption as a part of the plans review process will be a good element of the study to be done on how to regulate this going forward. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Williams. Again, just want to appreciate your contributions to this legislation. I want to say a few things in response. One, you talked about the strain on the grid from other operators, other municipalities, other states. Well, that is a really fair point, but what is also true is that if we were to build these here, it would require additional transmission lines for which we would have to pay. I will cite the example of South Baltimore, where the estimated cost was going to be $500 million. Please be clear, that is not what BGE is going to pay, that is what the ratepayer would pay. And so while you are correct that the Pennsylvania, Virginia, the other folks within the PJM region will of course contribute strain to the grid, as I said in my opening remarks, it is also true to say that if we invest in this technology, the cost of the transmission lines would bear an extraordinarily high burden on the city of Baltimore. Second point, I think to what you were talking about, I think our Second Amendment, the Second Amendment we put in there clearly covers that if it's a data center, it's prohibited. If it's not a data center, then it's not prohibited. And I think the amendment makes that pretty clear. And then just to your point about the 10 megawatts and sort of how to determine the substation, what I want to just say for the record is that data centers always report their IT load. And so there should not be ambiguity. We will know how many megawatts they're doing. So I think it is actually an appropriate threshold to determine the number and stick with that. That said, again, I sincerely appreciate Director Williams, your work on this, and if and when this bill passes, look forward to having you be part of the effort to engage around this study.
Councilwoman Porter, good morning. Thank you for being here. DHCD.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright and Deputy Commissioner Jason Hessler here representing DHCD. We first want to thank the Council President for introducing our suggested amendment delaying the effective date for 30 days. Our motivation behind that was so we have a little bit of time to establish a standard methodology to properly investigate should we get any zoning complaints of non-compliant uses. So data centers as defined within the bill in use during this period. Thank you.
Thank you. Commission on Sustainability.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Council President and Committee. I'm Amy Gilder-Basati, Sustainability Manager for the Office of Sustainability within the Department of Planning, and today I'm representing the Sustainability Commission. The Commission considered this item at their April meeting on April 15th and have submitted a report in support of the bill. A few points to raise on behalf of the Commission. They welcome the opportunity for the city to take this time to study the benefits and trade-offs associated with this use. The amendment related to a study involving various city agencies and also naming the Commission on Sustainability as being part of the agencies conducting this study was not available at the time that the Commission voted, but the Commission welcomes the opportunity to participate in that study. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I also just want to note, we had a hearing here yesterday where we had several non-Baltimore City residents coming to testify. So obviously there's interest in what happens in Baltimore City, beyond Baltimore City. And I'll note that it's probably to the benefit of anybody else that's on this grid and within the BGE network in particular, that benefits when we take a cautious approach to how we allow things that will impact ratepayers. Councilman Blanchard, you have a question about for Department of Finance?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Gabe, you can probably guess based off the conversation from yesterday, I am really interested in personal property taxes. And for folks in the audience, right, there's property taxes, which is there's the land and then the improvements, and there's personal property, which is things like equipment in industry or like these big servers and whatnot, which that rate is capped at 2.5 times our property tax rate. And so if you have a really equipment intensive use, there's a lot of property tax revenue that should be getting paid there. I have a hunch, and I think this is a really important conversation to pull SSTAT in on, obviously, but I have a hunch that SSTAT needs to update their practices for ensuring that data centers are paying the appropriate amount of personal property taxes. So I see somehow, yeah, a lot of these are, almost all these are in my district. A lot of them are in downtown, actually. The one I knew about, AINet, has an 80 megawatt capacity. And we had a good conversation yesterday about what that actual capacity might be or whatever. But I looked and I just Googled what the cost of these servers and other equipment would be. And it said, between 1 to 2.5 billion, perhaps. So let's be like super pessimistic, like cautious with our estimate there and say that personal property tax only comes out to $10 million a year. Okay, that's 2 orders of magnitude higher than what, and that's already like really cautious based off of that back of the napkin stuff. It seems not fathomable to me, and I could be wrong, that's why I'm asking, but that they would only have $100,000 of personal property value in an 80 megawatt data center, right? Like it seems unlikely that just like a kind of regular person who's saved up money for a couple years could just build an 80 megawatt data center. So can you talk me through what's going on there?
Sure. So SSTAT, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, assesses personal property. These are as you mentioned, the tangible property assets of businesses, and then the business pays whatever the local property, the local personal property to us, to the city. We rely on SSTAT to assess fairly and accurately. We have been in the real property area, have been appealing when we think something might be low. And so this might be a area to explore for personal property. However, I can't speak as to whether we'll start looking at each individual one, but I would have to defer to SSTAT on their methodologies for assessing personal property.
Yeah, because I would think that the real property, right, the building itself is actually not incredibly valuable. The value with these is going to be with all the equipment on the inside, is my hunch.
Correct.
And so I would say there's only 6 of these on here. Can I make this is another one of those examples, Mr. Chair, why I'm asking an agency to work with a state partner. But can I make a committee request for Department of Finance to ask SSTAT for assessments to look into the personal property value assessments of the properties listed?
You sure can.
Okay, so I'm asking SSTAT for the personal property assessments of data.
Well, we have the assessments, but I feel like maybe
Appeal or review.
a review of those assessments.
Pedro Ponte, who's our revenue director, will be responding.
Morning, Pedro.
Good morning, everyone. Pedro Ponte, Assistant Budget Director. For that particular property, that property has capacity to 80 megawatts. However, that property is divided by different floors. They don't have 80 megawatts of usage right now. The reason why that property is assessed at that value, and we can definitely investigate and get more detail from the SDAT, is that they don't use that level of energy. They rent the spaces, and the personal property is paid by each of the individuals who are renting those spaces, not necessarily the owner of the building. So when you see in that report that building has that payment, is the owner of the building, not necessarily the individual's renters in that particular facility. So that's why it's a little bit misunderstanding, but the capacity for that building is 80 megawatts. It's not that it's being paying assessment on that level.
So thank you for the clarification, Ms. Pontes. So is it possible that there's like a bunch of different end users or customers or tenants or whatever who are paying that personal property tax?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So I think maybe part of that committee request then would be for, if it's a situation like this where maybe there's 10 different users or something, to understand what the full personal property tax being paid across what we would think of as that single data set, the building.
Definitely. Just to clarify, maybe those tenants are not using any megawatts as intended as a center. But yeah, we can investigate with SDAT, get a list of those tenants, see what they paid in personal property.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because going back to the council president's point, I do think it's to make sure that we are getting something out of the deal here and not just being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And thank you, Pedro. And I see BMCA.
Justin?
If I may, Mr. Chair, chiming in, this is a big hobby horse of mine about SDAT's capacity. I'm not criticizing the people there, but the personal property taxes are self-reported primarily, and so we are relying on the goodwill of the businesses to accurately report the cost of and the value of their furniture, fixtures, inventory. And I think there's many opportunities for more scrutiny and more attention to this issue for both personal property taxes and real property taxes in Baltimore. So I think that's a right thing and probably should merits its own standalone investigation hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Equity and civil rights. Oh, Councilman Parker, good morning. How are you doing? Good morning, Mr. Chair. Equity and civil rights.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Zachary Wallman, Equity Policy Analyst for the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. First off, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor council, President Cohen, for introducing this legislation. We support the initiative to put a moratorium on data centers, particularly due to the fact that nationally, the proliferation of this industry has often outpaced the regulatory framework, which has resulted on a few, negative externalities on society and, inequitable impacts that those have had on particularly communities of color and low-income communities. I want to echo some of the concerns that have been raised here. Raising data rates, raising energy rates are going to be disproportionately borne by ratepayers without proper regulation. There's water impacts, which will lead to a competition for resources if not properly regulated. And that often is going to have the most burden on those that live in communities that are underinvested in their infrastructure. And finally, the air quality impacts of data centers, particularly due to generators, will have a overwhelming burden on already disadvantaged communities in the state of Maryland. We see that the asthma rate is about 9%. By comparison, in the city of Baltimore to our Department of Health, that's about 13.7%. We're already seeing a disproportionate impact on air quality in Baltimore City as it compares to the state. This, without taking proper regulatory measures, would definitely have, contribute to those disparate impacts. And all of this is on top of historically industrial and high impact infrastructure disproportionately burdens low-income communities, communities of color. So for these reasons, we support the bill. Particularly, we find it wise, the sponsors' amendments to conduct a study on data centers that will allow for the city to take a measured approach on how we allow this industry to proliferate. And we find it also a very good policy decision to support the sponsors' amendment to involve the community and get elicit public feedback in how we proceed with data centers throughout the city as a part of that study and include that in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. This is sort of a side concern that I'd like to bring to DHCD. This particular facility that we just had some discussion about and what Zachary just mentioned about air quality from generators was a concern that was brought up in a discussion that I had about particularly this property that we were just talking about, 300 West Lexington Street. There are reports that this property is frequently relying on a diesel generator in order to produce energy in order to operate. That maybe they have some sort of backup generator that ends up being very frequently used, or some, I don't know, for some failing of their general electrical infrastructure. I have no idea. I'd like to have DHCD try to see if there have been reports about this, noise specifically from that. I understand that the use of generators as a primary means of producing electricity is prohibited in the city. And while I understand there's some line to be drawn between like the idea of using it as a primary source of electricity and it being relied upon frequently and recurringly, as some essential part of continuity of electricity for the property, I think it bears some sort of investigation. If DHCD could please look into that center there, I appreciate it. Thank you. Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just want to highlight, we had a parallel hearing yesterday in the Public Health and Environment Committee that addresses a lot of the nuisances, the noise, and the air pollution issues with the companion bill for the health equity bill that I'm bringing forth towards this committee soon as well.
Thank you. Other committee member questions or anything for our agencies here who have reported? For the folks who were not here when the president presented the bill initially, I'll just note that there is, separate from the committee packet, there is a second document that is a revised set of amendments. They say Cohen V on them. They're more current than the ones in the packet. There's also an unofficial reprint for anybody interested in reviewing it that way. There's nothing else from the committee for the agencies, it sounds like. So we will go into public testimony here. We will, okay, I have one sheet here with 7 people signed in on it. We're checking, looks like Nancy's got a second sheet here. No? Okay, I will, in the order that I have here, great, I have 2 more people here. So I have nine people signed up for in-person testimony. I'm also going to ask Tony to put a note in the WebEx chat here for anybody who's online. He will put a note in there for the sign up to testify online for anybody who wishes to. When we finish the in-person testimony here, I will call people, but we will ask you to use the sign up function at the link that Tony is going to put in the chat here momentarily. we will begin, and everybody will get 2 minutes. Tony will have a timer up here, and I will ask you to cut it off at 2 minutes or wrap it up. Great. Okay, so we've got our 2-minute timer on the screen. First, and then for the folks testifying in person, come on up here to the podium. Whoever's first, hit that right button till the red light comes on, and then you don't have to turn it off when you're finished. Leave it on for the next person. We'll begin with Amy Petkoves. I'm sorry, that was not correct.
Good morning, Amy Petkosik, Executive Director of the Community Law Center. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you, City Council President, and for all who are supporting this bill. The Community Law Center is in support of the data center moratorium for the next year. On behalf and by request of our many client communities across the city, CLC has been studying data center zoning legislation for the past year. We've also been informed by a January 2026 report by the Southern Environmental Law Center, which highlights best practices in data center zoning to protect environmental integrity, to pursue community vitality, and to ensure that our data centers, much as we've heard a lot of this morning, are not contributing to the cumulative effect of environmental harm on communities that have already been historically harmed for many years. We are in agreement with certain amendments and in disagreement with a few others, so I'll spend my time there. We agree strongly with the formal study, with the deliverables, with the Planning Commission and the BDC's recommendation, with the amendment here this morning. The lessons that have been learned elsewhere and that are to be learned in Baltimore City make sense for a study group to gather, to hear from the community. We highlight the Planning Commission's statement that recommends robust community engagement with targeted outreach to neighborhood associations, environmental justice organizations, all of whom are Community Law Center's current and clients for the past 40 years. CLC is well positioned and ready to represent and to speak on community interest and to lead community engagement in these efforts. We're also in agreement with the conditional use framework recommendation. We believe that we should spend this year coming up with a framework so that when the moratorium sunsets, there is regulation in place and communities are better positioned than they are now. Community Law Center is in opposition to raising the threshold, the megawatts beyond 10. We actually believe it could go below 10. We're in agreement with the 10 recommendation, but a 10 megawatt facility represents energy use of 4,672 individuals. I'll conclude and just say that that aggregate effect is concerning to us, and we believe it should stay at 10.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Zirkle.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Committee. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on this bill. On behalf of the Maryland Tech Council, we are Maryland's largest life sciences and trade association, representing over 800 members across the state of Maryland. Firstly, I'd like to thank the sponsor of the bill and his staff for being very receptive and communicative to our members' concerns on this issue. And secondly, I'd like to note that we do support some of the amendments that were brought in the reprint of the bill. We believe that the study will allow this moratorium to be productive and allow for the conditional use framework that happens at the end of the study to be well informed. And we also are supportive of the redefining of data center in the bill to focus on primary use. We had some concerns that facilities that are intensive in terms of manufacturing or research or other things like hospitals might get captured by that definition, despite only having a small percentage of their energy dedicated to maintaining, a small server rack or something of that nature. A few things that we would also like to mention, some recommendations in terms of amendments, and these are captured in our written testimony as well. We are supportive of the amendment to raise the cap to 25 megawatts. The state has undergone a very deliberative process in identifying and determining the energy use of a building that would marginally impact ratepayers. This was a multi-year process. The thresholds were lowered. It included the Public Service Commission and tons of other stakeholders. And 25 megawatts was what was landed on in terms of an energy use amount that would impact ratepayers and justified a large load tariff. So we would encourage the bill to conform to that state definition of large load user. We would also encourage that we adopt the Planning Commission's amendment regarding the continuation of the planning process and the processing of proposals. This is a strategy that has been used by a number of other jurisdictions, and it ends up in a win-win. Development can start as soon as conditional use frameworks are adopted, and it allows for development to meet the goals that the body is intending.
Thank you, Mrs. Urkel. How tall are you?
6'5". I'm
Okay.
slouching a little bit, so I hit the mic.
Yeah, we should get the stool for the podium, not the guy.
We need like a copy of the yellow pages. We can stack it up a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Olivia Gillespie. Hi.
You got the short one now. Okay, press this.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Red means go. Okay, hello, good morning. I'm Olivia. I'm a local business owner. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. I am here to speak in opposition. I agree with the thought of the bill, but it needs to be much more robust. A year is not enough. And the fact that we have the Johns Hopkins DSAI project moving ahead shows me that the city doesn't take seriously the concerns of the population, and just throwing 10 megawatts around like it's nothing, like someone else said, that's thousands of homes. And 10 megawatts is what the Johns Hopkins DSAI project would consume. There have already been studies done around that location about the environmental impacts, which have not been heeded, and the construction has continued. There has already been many trees taken down to accommodate this project, which will ultimately affect the whole city for years to come. And the cost of the trees that were taken down is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those were the cities and our trees. And they were taken down to accommodate a project that, according to our city council Zeke Cohen, our man, this should cover that DSAI project, but there has not been any transparency regarding that DSAI project, and it has been pushed along again and again. Despite a lot of community outrage and protest, there has been a lot of documentation of the harm that construction has done to the community and the park already. This time is moving slow. Okay, I think that's all I really have to say. This needs to be a lot more robust, and the megawattage should be down. We can't trust that these companies will follow this 10 megawatts, and when it goes over, who does that affect? That affects the community. That's rolling blackouts for our community. And what will happen to the people who go over that 10 megawatts? What's the pushback? What will happen to them? How will we counteract if they go over that amount of megawatts? How will we counteract their pollution after this year? It needs to be longer, more robust. And I don't believe in the transparency of the city and the city council president at this point when it comes to transparency with these AI projects, because of what's happened with DSAI so far. I think what needs to also be thought about is infrastructure improvement instead of planning for data centers. Infrastructure improvement and improvement for our community is what should be centered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillespie. Jamar Lloyd.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jomar Lloyd, and I'm the Maryland organizer at Food and Water Watch, here representing around 3,000 members living in Baltimore City in support of a data center moratorium. I would like to briefly highlight again the environmental justice and affordability concerns that are being created by data centers. The energy demand of data centers is expected to increase exponentially by 2028. Soon, data centers could consume 300 terawatt hours of energy every year, enough to power 28 million households. As data centers flood the PJM grid, many Marylanders have already seen energy prices become unaffordable due to data centers all the way in Virginia's Data Center Alley. The construction of more data centers means more drain on our power grid and higher bills for those living in the city. To make matters worse, dirty coal and gas plants have been proposed as a way of powering these data centers. This can be seen in cities like Memphis, where Elon Musk's XAI is using unpermitted gas turbines for power. With many Baltimoreans already living in overburdened communities, keeping data centers and new gas projects out should be a #1 priority. There's also the issue of water consumption. To generate one email, OpenAI's GPT-4 can use as many as 3 bottles of water. By 2028, it's expected that AI data centers will be using as much water as 18.5 million households annually. This puts a massive strain on local water supplies and also water infrastructure. With water rates continuously rising in the city, Baltimore residents should not have to compete with data centers for water. A data center moratorium will protect Baltimore's families from the negative environmental impacts of running a data center, while also helping to combat growing electricity costs in the city. I urge the committee to support a moratorium and defend Baltimoreans from big tech. Thank you.
Before we go to the next person, just conferring with staff here. Apparently the online sign-up form to testify in person doesn't work, and we've been trying to get City IT to take that down so that the confusion is eliminated. Can I see a show of hands of people who may have signed up online in advance to testify in person? Okay, I've got 1, 2. Dave, are you testifying? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it looks like. 2 over here, 4 over here. Yeah, Nancy's gonna come around with a sheet and just ask each of you to sign up on this real quick so I can call you in turn. Thank you. Sorry about that. Brittany Baker with Chesapeake Climate Action Network. Good morning.
Hello, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm Brittany Baker, Maryland Director of the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, representing 30,000 members across the state, with Baltimore Action Team as one of our most robust teams. And I just really want to share our organizational support for this moratorium. It's clear that data center facilities are a threat to greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals, ratepayers, water resources, public health, and the working class. CCAN supports reasonable, careful, community-led development of data centers, but the reality in Maryland is that state, local, and PJM level regulations are not developed enough to provide protection of these various entities. At the state level, the Large Load Registry established in HB 1532, the Utility Relief Act, will not be completed to July 1st, 2027. The Clean Energy Rating System established in the same bill will not be ready until December 15th, 2027. The data center study that was finalized in the 2025 legislative session is coming out this September, and the large load customer rate schedule will be established by the PSC this upcoming September. According to the Brookings Institute, local jurisdictions have the most leverage and power to ensure any local data center development is not rushed, and that permitting, zoning, and financial incentives are adequate to set up the city of Baltimore to receive sustained economic and community benefits from the development of any data center sites. This moratorium is wise, prudent, and necessary, and most of all, timely. 2 last notes before I wrap up. 1, the amendment to accept applications during the moratorium period is very dangerous. It gives data center developers unwarranted political power to influence the regulatory process during the moratorium period. Also, remember that Baltimore ratepayers are particularly vulnerable because of the PJM capacity market auction. Baltimore is the only place that has, in the past, have capacity constraints equal to what we see in Loudoun County because of your current energy transition with the decommissioning of the Brandon Shores power plant and Wagner power plant as well. Therefore, CCAN supports this moratorium and hopes that you don't add any weakening amendments.
Thank you. Just before we go to the next person, who did the planning staff report on this?
Austin Davis did the work, and he's here with us.
He's here. I can see him. I just want to say thanks. Good work. Really appreciate it. I appreciate also the especially the comparable jurisdictions, understanding who else has done these kind of moratoriums, pauses, and such. And I want to note that Singapore, the only non-U.S. Example in here, is the only one that had included in their changes adopting energy efficiency standards and green energy as a necessary part of data center production. Maybe we don't have to be as dumb as the rest of America. Maybe we can do things better. Chris Anderson.
Good morning, Chair and President Cohen and the rest of the members of the committee. I'm Chris Anderson with Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 486. I represent nearly 3,000 members in the union doing the mechanical trades, of which about 200 live within within Baltimore City. We are the guys on the jobs, building these data centers, putting in the HVAC systems, the cooling systems for the data centers. I just want to speak on like water usage, as it's my trade, it's what I know. The water usage is not what it used to be in data centers of the past that were built years ago with evaporative cooling systems. The newer cooling systems with air-cooled chillers, closed-loop systems, they don't consume water daily like, you know, to the millions of gallons like they're portrayed online. They use far less. Once the system is full, the way you lose water is a leak, which you could have a leak in anything, you know, any piping in any building. So with that, I just wanted to, you know, bring that into light. I know that's an issue that a lot of people like to talk about. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Jennifer Kunze, Clean Water Action.
Good morning, Jennifer Kunze with Clean Water Action and a resident of District 13. Clean Water Action strongly supports the moratorium and encourages you to pass it with the sponsor amendments and without other weakening amendments. The moratorium is in step with what other counties, our peer counties in Maryland, have done to deal with the data center issue. Montgomery County actually just introduced a one-year moratorium bill on May 5th, just this week. So it's something Montgomery County is currently debating in their council and moving forward with. Baltimore County and Carroll County each passed one-year moratoriums just in February, and Frederick and Prince George's counties longer ago. So this is a really good step in step with what our peer counties are doing across the state. I will speak a little bit to the water issues. Data centers use a variety of chemicals in their cooling systems, refrigerants, cooling loop chemicals, corrosion inhibitors that include PFAS, and so that is a significant concern that needs study during this moratorium period, how those discharges may affect either our sewer treatment plants or our stormwater system. I do want to say that I hope the council will not take the amendment to raise the 10 megawatt threshold. I agree with the testimony of the Community Law Center that if anything, 10 megawatts is too high. That's already represents a huge compromise, exempting data centers under 10 megawatts from the moratorium at all. Please do not raise that any higher. And other counties have defined data centers in their moratoriums without including a megawatt threshold at all, just applying it to all data centers. So 10 megawatts is already a big compromise. Please don't push it any further. And also do not take the amendment to allow processing of applications during the moratorium period. This would also be, not taking that amendment would also be in line with our peer counties across the state. The bill that Montgomery County, Evan Glass, just introduced this week put a moratorium on the accepting, reviewing, or issuing of permits related to data centers. And Carroll County's moratorium that they adopted in February put a moratorium on the accepting and processing of permits related to data centers. So please reject those two amendments and move this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well timed. Does this say Rachel Gredson?
Sorry, my handwriting is like truly terrible. My name is Rachel Gadsden, and I am with the Baltimore Public Power Campaign. We, as the campaign, are generally in support of this bill, which would place a one-year moratorium on data centers. The Public Power Campaign is an entirely grassroots, community-led effort to transition away from BGE's exploitative monopoly to a publicly owned utility that would ensure lower energy bills, cleaner energy, and local control for Baltimore City residents. I would also love to see there not be an exception for centers up to 10 megawatts, simply because I think it is time to take really big steps. Tech is outpacing regulation, it's outpacing city, state, and local government, it's outpacing our power grids, it's outpacing what we as people are like prepared to understand and participate in as informed consumers. And the only way that we regulate this to make sense for people, for cities, for our power grids, for our bills, which are outrageous, is by looking really comprehensively at the impact of data centers and taking the idea of investment in a city really seriously. So when a company builds a center that is for computers and not for people, that only employs a small number of people, or even almost no people for the data centers that are actually just leasing space virtually to other companies, that's not an investment in a city, that's extortion. That's them raising our bills and forcing us to pay for their profits. What is investment is when groups of residents come together and say, all of our bills are unaffordable, and we want to change that. We want to create a system that actually benefits us, that serves people. That's investment. So I think as you're spending a year figuring out how to regulate this, think about what kind of investment the city deserves and where it's genuinely coming from.
Thank you. Andrew Hines.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hins. I'm a Baltimore City resident. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. This is all about dirty energy.
Can you come back from the mic like 2 inches?
I'm too loud?
Yeah,
This is all about dirty energy. Despite current federal policy and even state policy, we are in the middle of a climate catastrophe. And as I said, this is about dirty energy. The worst day on Earth that we can remember happened 64 billion years ago when a lot of species went extinct, including dinosaurs. That one day was better than any day that there will ever be on Mars, that one day on Earth. Mars is not a backup planet for us. None of us want to live in an Amazon warehouse that's floating around in space. And none of us want our brains inside of some kind of a Google machine. Not only are these things impossible, they're unrealistic, they are scientific fantasies that show the misunderstanding of the oligarchs that are funding this bubble. The federal government has failed us, the state government is failing us. We need you to step up, so thank you for this moratorium. And do not lose sight of the fact that this is all a play to push more dirty energy on us. As a city ratepayer and taxpayer, I don't want to pay one more dime for dirty energy, and I don't want one more life lost on this planet over dirty energy, because every single molecule of dirty energy that's approved and permitted means a life lost on this planet. That's where we are in this catastrophe, and this is a moment to take action. And a moratorium is a step, and then we need no more dirty energy. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Hins. Andy Ellis.
Good morning, and thank you all for the opportunity to testify on this. My name is Andy Ellis. I'm a resident of the 3rd District. I'm also, for the record, running for governor as a Green Party candidate. I'm here today to testify in favor with amendment on this bill. I'm favorable because I believe state and local government action to stop the build-out of data centers is essential at this moment. Those that want to build them want to get them built as quickly as they can to take advantage of lax regulation, political uncertainty, and free-flowing cash. They also know once they are built, they're not going anywhere, so I applaud the effort of this council and the people and organizations here today. I am offering an amendment to turn the moratorium into a ban, or at least a much longer moratorium. We can study, plan, and build capacity to innovate with the presumption against the industry, not in favor of it. If you pass a 1-year moratorium, the people who want to build the data centers here will not give up. They will circle that date on the calendar, and they will put their robots, their lobbyists, their AstroTurf campaigns, and their money into winning big next year. While some of you all and all of us will be fighting all the other things we need to fight in this city right now, they will have people focused exclusively on this for the next year. In closing, the balance of forces are on the people's side right now. Opposition is strong, and we have the data center lobby and the industry on its back foot. We should not assume it will stay that way for a year when the fight comes back. You should use this moment of opportunity to give the city maximum leverage to stop the industry from coming here to extract and exploit, not give them a year to regroup. I urge a ban, but if a moratorium is the best you can do, it should last at least until the people know you all have gotten it right and we can weigh in on an election. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Julie Spurd.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Julius Bird. I'm a resident of Upper Park Heights. My background is commercial real estate. I show support for the moratorium. As I would like to, and the reason for my support is because I think that when it's all said and done, the moratorium should support jobs that can kind of leverage the AI takeover. AI is taking over a lot of jobs around the U.S., so we want to make sure that we have some kind of offset to leverage that. So that's the reason why I'm in support. Also, I think that there should be language that explicitly states that how the residents will not pay for this extra wattage, this extra megawattage. So that's one point. The second thing I'd like to say is, why not look at the megawatt from a regional perspective? Downtown, 10 megawatts. Towards the county, maybe a little bit higher. So that's just something to consider. And the last point is, while this moratorium is in place, why not use this time to take a deep dive into the data center industry? And what I mean by that, there's a symposium in Bethesda. It's called the Data Center Investment Conference and Expo. And this is Tuesday, May the 12th, next week, May the 12th through May the 14th. And I looked at the agenda, and there's a lot of robust items. So that would be something that the city should consider while this moratorium is in effect. And I'd like to leave this with you, please, President, so you can have this for the record.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anjali Galati.
Good morning, esteemed members of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. My name is Anjali Galati, and I'm here with Interfaith Power and Light DMV, working with faith communities locally across Baltimore, Maryland, Northern Virginia, and DC to respond to climate change and fight for environmental justice. I urge a favorable report on the data centers moratorium bill. Even though the DSAI infrastructure was voted upon favorably last December by the Board of Estimates, and we asked for reassurance that it wouldn't be a data center, We never got that ascertained on paper. Last week, while we were celebrating the Baltimore Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights resolution, which is great and I applaud that, I raised concerns about DSAI, about the trees which have been cut, the residents who have been disturbed by the construction, and the reply was that it wouldn't be a data center, it'd be an academic institution used to study the impacts of AI, a characterization that I had never before heard or read. It is not too late for this committee to resolve this error because we know that that is not true. Yesterday, Maryland's Board of Public Works approved another major step forward for the Johns Hopkins Bayview Data Center project, including a $9 million grant with our taxpayer money approved with virtually no public discussion just one day before this moratorium vote. Communities are still demanding transparency, accountability, and honest engagement about what these projects will mean for our neighborhoods, our grid, our air, our water, and our future. As people of faith, we believe our communities are sacred. They are not sacrifice zones for unchecked AI infrastructure and corporate profit. So no more secrecy, no more unchecked expansion. Please consider including the Hopkins Data Center in this one-year moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Dustin Branch?
Good morning, members of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill today. I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on this bill. Nearly 30 years ago, over 1,100 activists from across the country gathered in Washington, D.C. for the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit and drafted the Principles of Environmental Justice. 17 principles focused on community engagement and decision-making, restorative justice, and defense of vulnerable populations and ideals, which have helped guide the modern environmental justice movement and have helped enable much of the progress that we enjoy today here in Baltimore City. But with rampant AI speculation and breakneck expansion by big tech, that progress is under threat. PJM projects our state's energy demand to increase to 32 megawatts by 2030, and data centers are slated to drive 30 megawatts of that growth, 94%. With Amazon, just the latest, to achieve MDE approval for nearly 100 diesel generators for their data center in Frederick County, state policy is far behind the need for new clean energy production from these data center facilities. A temporary moratorium in Baltimore can give state and local regulations time to catch up and require data centers to bring their own generation through 100% clean energy. With data centers rapidly becoming the most prominent topic this election year, Baltimore has the opportunity to create a model, an example that our state elected officials and leaders across the country can follow. Our city and our communities cannot afford to gamble on our shared future. I respectfully urge a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Hillary Gonzalez?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Hillary Gonzalez, and I am a founding member of Sacred Parks and Waterways. I am here to support the bill, but I would like to respectfully say that a one-year pause is not enough. We already know the harms data centers can bring to communities: enormous energy demands, infrastructure strain, environmental degradation, noise, and increased pressure on neighborhoods already dealing with flooding, pollution, and heat. And now, as of yesterday, we learned from a Baltimore Business Journal article about the proposed AI and data infrastructure projects connected to Johns Hopkins DSAI Institute, which will support the institute itself, a project expected to continue through 2029, which would conveniently place it outside of the time frame for this proposed moratorium. That means institutions can simply wait for this moratorium to expire. A temporary delay does not stop long-term expansion. Communities in Remington and East Baltimore have already experienced the impacts of institutional expansion for years: tree loss, construction disruption, stormwater concerns, environmental impacts, and decisions made without meaningful community power and despite extreme pushback. Baltimore should not become a sacrifice zone for the AI industry. We need stronger legislation that permanently prevents large-scale commercial data centers from being built in Baltimore before irreversible harm is done. This is about environmental justice, public health, infrastructure, and the future of our neighborhoods. I urge you to pass this moratorium to not raise the wattage, but also strengthen it for lasting protections for Baltimore communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy Kane.
Howdy.
Hi, good morning.
My name is Jeremy Kane, longtime Baltimore resident, first-time testifier, so this is very exciting. AI is coming for all of our jobs, and that's not fear-mongering speculation, that's a description of what's happening now. Since the opening of the Pandora's ChatGPT, I have survived 2 rounds of layoffs at my company, and I'm not so sure about the third. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to push ChatGPT AI chatbots for city councils. Do you think AI can replace you? I don't think so, but it won't, not without the massive network of data centers everywhere. Each new data center gives another CEO more excuses to lay off more people. It's gotta be the biggest job killer, economy killer out there. It is an election year, and this is an easy win. People who have never voted for the same candidate are now aligned in opposition against data centers, against AI. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for my rep, Zach. Good to see you, and have a great day.
Thank you. And the last person I have on the sheet here, Anna Wolf.
My name's Anna Wolf, and I'm a resident of Baltimore, a maker and a mentor. I've been living in Baltimore for about a decade, and in that time, I've had the opportunity to rent in neighborhoods, and I recently, in the last 2 years, moved to the Baltimore Inner Harbor. I have noticed the sound from the South Street Data Center. I live very close to one. I can hear it from my kitchen, 16 stories up. I also have noticed the hole that is in our harbor. It just seems empty, right? I would prefer to have buildings that are full of people, full of life. So I've also noticed in other states, tech companies making promises, like in Silicon Valley, to help invigorate a city, to bring money to a city. When we're making this decision, and I support this moratorium, I really want us to think about where we're placing these buildings, right? And how they're impacting the people that live next to them. I would like us to kind of throw away that idea of go fast and break things to let's really build a city that cares about people, right? So that's what I'd like to say. I'd like us to really think about where we're placing these buildings. Think about, are they bringing their own energy solutions? Can that energy please be clean energy? And let's not keep raising the bills for residents to support something that I don't think is creating jobs, right? These are remote positions. They're not positions for people in Baltimore City, right? So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to Zeke Cohen for supporting this bill and bringing it to the table. And thank you to the committee here today.
Thank you. Sorry, one last one, Mark Anthony Thomas.
Good afternoon, Chair Dorsey and the committee members. I'm Mark Anthony Thomas. I lead the Greater Baltimore Committee. We bring together business, academic, nonprofit, and public sector partners to grow the regional economy. Just wanted to share a comment on today's bill. The GBC shares the city's goal of protecting ratepayers, planning responsible, and ensuring thoughtful growth around our emerging industries. At the same time, we do want to ensure the Baltimore region stays competitive and that investment that's tied to the infrastructure demands of a modern economy are thoughtfully shared. We released last night an in-depth overview of the pipeline of investment that we actively maintain and that actually looks back over 15 years. And so more broadly, the economic development industry is grappling with how we responsibly build the infrastructure needed to support what are increasingly inevitable demands tied to digital infrastructure, computing capabilities, and AI-driven technologies. Healthcare systems, manufacturers, institutions, and logistical networks are all increasingly leaning into AI infrastructure and advanced computing capabilities, and we actually want them to. These technologies are helping predict diseases earlier, supporting life-saving research, improving operational efficiencies, and creating safer worker environments. We do, however, want to express several concerns that the bill as currently drafted. It defines data centers in an overly broad way and could unintentionally impact hospitals, research institutions, and other facilities where computing infrastructure is critical, but not primary use. Second, the 10 megawatts threshold is significantly less than the state's existing standard, and that's something that we should really work through. And lastly, we believe projects that are already in the pipeline should be allowed to continue while we establish this effort to really look at a long-term plan. Baltimore should approach this issue thoughtfully and strategically, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go to folks who signed up to testify online. Great. We have Ted Eccleston.
Hey there, can you hear me?
We can. You have 2 minutes. Good morning.
All right. Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for the time to be here. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. It's difficult to participate in these public events when we have full-time jobs. So yeah, but thanks for making the virtual available. Just wanted to say that yes, I as a member of Harwood community here in like northern Baltimore, definitely for this moratorium. I just do believe, and I want to emphasize that any study that the city does should include the public. I know there's mention of community groups, but it seems the language is a little weak. There's really no mention of what participation that community effort can be. I think this should be a community-led effort. Just 5 months ago at the Board of Estimates meeting in December, the city didn't even have a definition for a data center. So I really do think that city leadership should recognize that the community that lives in Baltimore, that works here, does have a lot of intelligence, does have a lot to bring to this conversation. Hopkins, I know this is not necessarily part of today's discussion, but Johns Hopkins made a mockery of their DSAI center not actually being a data center. They said they'll never be used for data center purposes, and then just found out yesterday that the state is giving them $9 million to go ahead with their East Baltimore data center, which is definitely going to be tied to DSAI. I do believe that that amendment saying that the city will accept applications during the moratorium should be struck down. That is outrageous. I think the city should send a strong signal to anybody who wants to build data centers in Baltimore City that we're serious about this. We're not just going to keep on accepting applications. Another thing that's really important to mention is that the technologies, of course, earlier was mentioned around water quality, but the energy technologies can be scaled up and down. So this 10 megawatt number, while it does have some strength and staying power, we need to have this time to really understand the emerging technologies for scaling power up and down for data centers. And the last thing I would like to say is that any kind of AI-related research or compute infrastructure should include some guardrails from the city around how AI is going to be used. It's unfair to say AI plainly is good for our economy, good for our city. I know a lot of people are, a lot of the public is against it, and I think that the city leadership should take a very close look at what their citizens and residents are saying and what they don't want, because we still live in a democracy, and in Baltimore City, we have the power to vote people out if they do not stand up for our requests and our needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Last person we have to testify is online here. Sashi Robinson. Sorry, timer was not working right before. Okay, it looks like we no longer have Sashi Robinson on the WebEx, and so that will conclude our testimony here. Committee members, do we want to proceed with the vote right now? Do we want to take a 2-minute recess or anything like that? No? We're good? Councilman Blanchard?
Can I make a committee request to Baltimore Development Corporation?
Please.
I appreciate a couple of constituents of mine who live in downtown and had reached out before the hearing to point out the data center that I was unaware of, and then I appreciate Finance's report that points out that the majority of the data centers we're aware of in the city currently are in downtown. This was not intuitive to me as to why downtown would be a desirable location, and I would asked a similar question yesterday in the hearing, trying to get a better understanding of where, like what data center developers are looking for and what they're trying to prioritize. So I'm really curious. I would not think downtown would be the type of place they'd want to put it. I don't know if it has something to do with the communications backbone architecture and everything. But so the committee request for BDC would be to provide some estimation or theory as to why downtown is being used for data centers. Is that clear to Mr. Welly?
Certainly. Thank you, Councilman. We'd be happy to look into that for you and give you some answers.
Yeah, to the committee chair's point, it feels like not the type of land use we would necessarily be wanting to encourage in the densest residential area in the city.
Yeah, absolutely. That AINet building at 300 West Lexington is like kind of right next to the old Hochul Cohn building on Howard Street. Before the term data center meant anything to me, in the midst of a conversation years ago about, Baltimore County's got fiber optic, Fios. Why don't we have, in the city of people, no, there's actually fiber optic here in the city. It's just not for the everyday people, households generally. And they noted that building, the Hochul Cohn building, had a bunch of data servers on the upper levels, and that it was strategically chosen to be there because, and I don't know anything about the actual infrastructure, I just remember this conversation when they said the largest trunk of fiber optic lines on the eastern seaboard is running directly underneath that building. And so it's a perfect place to have that kind of infrastructure if, speed and access to that network is of paramount importance to you. So that I'm sure that BDC is going to be able to talk about that and what they find.
Yeah, certainly happy to look into that for the committee. And I can just say that some of the data center uses that are downtown, it's more of an adaptive reuse thing. Obviously, it's not what you're thinking of, a large gray box in the middle of, a big hyperscale data center, but some of these buildings in their second life already have heavy load electric capabilities that sort of make them well suited to containing data transfer equipment, switching materials like the Verizon building on Charles Street, things of that nature. The infrastructure in some of those buildings is already there to support some of these functions. So that's why some of those are located in second generation, office buildings downtown.
Fun fact, that Verizon Center building on Charles Street is one of the several locations that my grandfather's business used to be located in, an actual old storefront building in Baltimore that's been replaced by big monolithic things that contribute nothing to the street life in the city. Councilman Parker, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I wasn't sure exactly how you're planning to do so, but before we move to the amendments, or as we move to the amendments, I wanted to speak to one of the amendments in particular, so just flagging that interest.
We'll bring that up as we get to that amendment. We'll go through the amendments. one by one. As we do so, can I just ask the council president to reiterate what each one of them does? Council President, amendment number 1.
Yeah, clarifies that data centers cannot be included under the office or telecommunications facility use categories in addition to the research and development use category, which is in the first reader version of the bill. An applicant can't try to sneak a data center through the zoning approval process by calling it something else.
Great, I appreciate that. I would move this amendment favorable, and it's moved, and so is there any discussion on this amendment before Councilwoman Porter?
And can you clarify, why not other industries as well besides telecommunication?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
you
so.
got choppy for a second.
Yeah, no worries. So we're specifically focusing on telecommunications. Can you explain why we did not include other industries as well besides telecommunications?
Because I think that is the primary driver of what we see as modern data centers. I think my definition, what I'm looking at is largely around computing, telecommunications, large operable facilities that hold significant megawattage. But what I don't want to capture in this bill is things like hospitals, things like, someone had brought up the other day, what if T. Rowe Price wanted to expand their office in downtown Baltimore? I want to make sure, and I think amendment number 2 addresses this to some of what the GBC was saying, that we're focused exclusively on data centers, but not drifting into other primary uses.
Can you turn the microphone on, please? Push the thing down.
Other primary uses like what?
Like a hospital, like a business that...
Academic institutions?
What's that?
Academic institutions?
Financial institutions. I want to be pretty clear that in this current definition with the amendments as I laid them out, academic institutions would be considered as well. And so I think to some of the commentary, this bill will include those institutions that are above 10 megawatts.
Okay,
Appreciate the question.
Anything else on this amendment? Okay, concluding discussion on this. It's been moved. All in favor of adopting this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. We have 1 nay. Any abstentions? Okay, we have 4 affirmative, 1 opposed. The amendment is adopted, or is voted favorable, rather. Amendment number 2, Mr. President.
Clarifies the definition of data center by specifying that computing and data transmission has to be the primary use. This ensures, for example, if a major business downtown, as I was just discussing, wants to expand their footprint, they can do so as long as they don't have a data center as part of their plans. What this amendment does not do, again, is raise the threshold from 10 megawatts or allow data centers as part of a larger facility. Again, my intent here is no exceptions. This is about capturing data centers. This is not about capturing other businesses that aren't data centers.
Thank you. I'll move this amendment. Is there any discussion on this before we take a vote?
I have one.
Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much. The primary use how are we quantifying primary use?
How are we quantifying primary use?
Primary use, yes.
That it is the main driving use of the facility.
How are we quantifying that? So, you know, when someone says they have like a primary use, are we looking at their operations? Are we looking at square footage? What are we quantifying that use of primary with?
So again, 10 megawatts is the defining feature in this. We have a zoning code which defines uses, and those are the definitions that we will fall.
Anything else on this amendment? Okay, it's moved. All in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstention? Okay, we have 4 in the affirmative, 1 negative. This amendment is voted favorable. Amendment number 3 is the study per BDC and Planning Commission.
Yep. Includes the recommendation from BDC and Planning Commission to include a study. It's due 9 months after the enactment of the bill to give us time to consider the recommendations and enact them. The study will also include community engagement to ensure our neighbors, partners in the building trades, and other key stakeholders are included in the process.
Any discussion on this before we vote? Okay, all in favor of approving this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstain? Okay, this amendment is voted favorable. Amendment number 4 regarding the sunset.
This amendment incorporates the Planning Commission's recommendation to sunset the entire bill after a year. This, again, incentivizes us to take action. We will set a high bar for any data center development in our city that protects our communities and workers.
Thank you. I'll move this amendment favorable, and I'll just, for my own clarification, the first reader sunsets the moratorium, but leaves the definition in the code, but leaves it where there is no instance of the use being noted as permitted in any of the zoning tables. So while the first reader takes away the express moratorium, it in effect carries it out indefinitely by the use continuing to be defined and not included in any of the tables. And the recommendation here is on the idea that if the definition itself is struck, it puts us back into the same state of ambiguity that we are in right now, where somebody's going like, well, then what is a data center? How can we say yes to it? How can we say no to it? Because we don't even have a definition of it. And the idea is that this sunset gives us fair warning and understanding that a year off, we are going to be thrust back into this state of ambiguity if we don't take action to further define data centers and how they may be permitted under what conditions. Is that accurate? Yep, okay, great. Councilman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Council President, for bringing this forward to us. The chair gave a good description of, I think, what Mr. Tiso the other day, maybe yesterday, I think described as perhaps a bug, and I would describe as a feature. Right? Whether it was intentional or not, I think it's actually the way it ought to be. That is to say, the amendment which we just recommended calls for a 9-month study, a vigorous, robust 9-month study. I'm sure that we will work hard to accomplish the goals of that study within 9 months, but also I recognize that leaves 3 months if that study goes exactly smoothly, and it calls for a very robust study. It leaves us 3 months to complete a legislative process before we're back in a completely vague situation with no definitions, nothing in the zoning code whatsoever regarding this. I think we can take action now to simply not approve this and to let this portion of the code be there until we replace it with the proper, fully thought out legislation that will be the result of the study that we've just approved, and that would in fact be the safest, most prudent thing for us legislatively, as well as for our communities who would be the ones harmed by a default back into the current status quo of nothingness. And so I am opposed to this amendment. I think that I think there's going to be plenty of urgency all around. We don't need this urgency that we've artificially placed on ourselves. I think there's going to be a ton of urgency from our friends of the Greater Baltimore Committee, from Baltimore Development Corporation, from our friends in industry and research. There's going to be plenty of urgency, plenty of phone calls, plenty of emails to have us take action on the results of the study that we've done. We don't need to add extra urgency by creating an artificial timeline for ourselves that might force us into a situation where either we have to extend the moratorium to give ourselves that extra month or two, right, and create more uncertainty, or put ourselves in a position where we're forced to put forward legislation that we maybe aren't fully comfortable with, just so that we have something there. And so I think it's more prudent for us to not move this forward, to let it sit until we've actually finished the work.
Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much. In a similar vein, I believe that we can find another word besides abrogated. So it reads that this ordinance shall be abrogated and of no further force or effect. That specifically means to appeal. I think that we should find another word besides that, similar to Councilman Parker's point. After the 9 months, if there are no indications or any movement after that, then we'll be in the same situation again. And so I definitely applaud the intent of the amendment, but the word abrogated, I just want to remind colleagues what that word officially means, and also the likelihood of that execution happening should we not move past those 9 months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Blanchard.
I have because as we're talking about the sunset provision and whatnot and the timing and whatnot, I think this question is for Councilwoman Porter with your bill on how does these two bills play into, and I'm sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head.
No worries. So there are two bills that I have. So yesterday we had an informational hearing regarding data centers. The secondary, which is a parallel bill, is a health equity assessment. And so it is quantifying those nuisance, pollutions, all of those complaints that we've heard here today within the BMZA process as a condition of the conditional use process. Now, there are a few reasons why I did it in that respect, because I think it was last hearing or the hearing before that, Chair Dorsey mentioned the intent and the movement of this committee is quasi in nature. And so any type of recording or public recording is considered record. And so having an opportunity to place those health assessments on record with the city of Baltimore allows for any type of judicial proceeding after, should there be any health implications after. And so it allows the push for community to really go after companies if there are anything that happens health related in nature.
And is there a definition? So let's say this gets abrogated, appealed, whatever, you have to 12-month period, but your bill passes. Does the land use category exist in your bill so that we would?
No, so we specifically focused on the health implications. So we're quantifying it from a different perspective.
Right.
And I would also like to add, Councilwoman Ramos is working on the data and use standards for data centers. And so I'm hopeful that over these next few months, we'll be able to have a hearing related to that, because I think that also needs to be juxtaposed to this conversation as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd just like to ask a legal question. I don't like to interrupt voting proceedings on otherwise, but I think this is a legal question. I want to understand if the use of the word abrogated is a term of art in drafting or anything.
I looked it up in Black's Law Dictionary. It means repealed, basically.
Okay. Thank you. I'll say my point on this. I am going to call this a vote in just a second. My perspective on this is that if the sunset were extended at a later date, it would not not by any means be unprecedented. In the 3 terms here, I've been on the council, I've seen numerous sunsets extended, and to me, that gives me a sense of possibility that if we get through the 9-month study period and have not really come to a conclusion about what we want to pass and feel good about within the 1-year period, then that 3 months as we're closing in on it gives us, I would say, ample time to put forth a very simple bill just to say we need 6 more months or whatever it is in order to continue to debate this and get a bill in that we all feel very good about. So
But-
I'm not particularly
But Mr. Chair.
scared. Councilwoman Porter.
Yes, sir. I just would want to add that while I appreciate and I know that the council president will move expeditiously over those 3 months, we have to be careful of the language that we are voting on in this session alone.
And again, what is there's language of concern in this amendment specifically?
Yeah, the language of this concern in this amendment is this ordinance shall be abrogated and of no further force or effect.
So this,
That last sentence, yep.
so the term abrogated means repealed in this
That's correct.
context.
Yes, that's correct.
And so,
And so the combination of the language shall be and of no further force and effect.
okay. So I take it then you are essentially in agreement with Councilman, I'm trying to understand the position. You and Councilman Parker are of the same mind
Yeah,
about?
we have the same line.
Okay,
Yep,
got
same
you.
line.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I'd like to call this amendment to a vote now. I will move this amendment favorable. All in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. I have 2 nay, 3 affirmative. This amendment is voted favorable. Amendment number 5, the implementation delay. Mr. Council President, you want to say anything else?
Incorporates the DHCD request to delay implementation by 30 days.
Great, thank you. I will move this amendment favorable. Is there any concern about this one? Not this one. Okay. All in favor of?
Mr. Chair?
Councilman Blanchard.
I do actually have a question on this one. So we had a great conversation with MOGR at the smoke shops bill. MOGR had the concern about figuring out enforcement. You know, they needed the timing afterwards. And so we agreed to put in the 30-day enactment, right, timing. Is there, but this is just a zoning bill. Is there a reason why we are having the 30 days post enactment here?
Mr. President?
Yeah, I think just, you know, having worked extensively with the really good team at DHCD, what I will say is while this is a zoning bill, these are often complicated issues, and if we are going to indeed, as you suggested, enact different standards at the end of this, giving the agency some time to be able to implement, to be able to come up with their interpretation, I think is fair. And again, I think it's good partnership in working directly with the administration. DHCD has been a really good thought partner on this, and I wanted to respect their desire for some time to interpret and then enact.
Understood. And Deputy Commissioner Hessler, so this is something that feels helpful for the agency in figuring out that that extra month is needed?
It does. You know, we cover a lot of things. So there's always different pressing items that need to be addressed. And so while it seems like it's something that, just put your head down and you can figure out in a day, we often have a wall fall down or another emergency that draws attention away. So having that 30 days to sort out exactly how this bill plays out, and you can't do that ahead of time until you get the actual approved bill because amendments come in. So having that time will help us figure out how we're going to do enforcement, how it even plays out on the permitting side with existing projects and any future projects, especially with permits coming in, making sure that the permitting team understands what terminology to look for, our electrical engineers make sure they have the calculations needed and when to flag something that might not say data center, but is. So
Yeah, okay, understood. And I want to compliment you on your three-piece suit. It's not every day that someone on that side of the dais is as well-dressed as Councilman Bullock.
Okay,
so.
we're taking a vote, thanks. Anything else on this amendment before we, okay, great. All in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Abstain. Okay, this amendment is voted favorable. We have 5 amendments all voted favorable. I will move the bill favorable with amendments. Any discussion on the bill before we take that vote? Okay, I appreciate that. We have the discussion on the amendments. We will take a roll call vote. The chair votes yes. I'll go over here. Councilman Parker? Yes. Councilwoman Porter? Yes. Councilman Bullock? Aye. Councilman Blanchard? Aye. We have 5 in the affirmative here. I'm sorry that I know that Councilman Gray had another engagement earlier and couldn't be here to take the votes with us, but appreciate him being here earlier as well. This bill will be reported favorable with amendments to the council at its next meeting. We are concluded here today. Thank you.